Alright, today we're going to be talking about India. And if we're talking about India, the first civilization ever would be the Indus Valley. We've already talked about two of the four first civilizations. We talked about Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent. We talked about China's Huanghe Valley, which would be that Xia dynasty. Later in the year, we'll be talking about Egypt off the Nile River. But right now, we're going to talk about India, the Indus Valley. Let's talk just briefly about the geography of India. When we talked about China, we mentioned that there are some mountains that protect them from the west. Not only will these mountains protect China from Mesopotamia, Europe, Persia, India, but they'll also protect India from China. This is why we're going to see a very different, at least part of the reason why, we'll see a very different culture in India than in the rest of Asia. To the west of India, if you're looking at the map there, it'd be the northwest part. You can kind of see it looks rather dead. There's a desert, the Thar Desert. This will also be good for protection. It'll help protect India from Mesopotamia, Persia, Europe, for the most part. It's not as good of a protection as the Gobi and the other natural deserts that protect China, but it will protect India until Alexander the Great. There are some nice rivers in India, but the one that we're going to talk about the most is the Indus River. Now this river is going to be great for farming, just like those other civilizations we've talked about. Some hunter-gatherers found the river valley that flooded every year. There are animals there, there are plants there. Someone's going to build a house, then a few more people build houses, and then a small community turns into a town. Town discovers farming, turns into a city, and before you know it, we've got a country or an empire or whatever. So we got some rivers that'll help with farming. Rivers are also great for fishing. The oceans will provide a lot of food as well. As far as India goes, we got two main seasons: the wet season and the dry season. Just to give you an idea how wet the wet season is, some areas of India will actually receive a yearly average of 450 inches of rain just during the wet season. That's 37.5 feet of rain in just a few months. If you watch the news, just about every year there's flooding in India. Now you got an idea why. But let's talk about the civilization. The first civilization is called the Indus Valley Civilization. If you look at a map, it's in the northwestern part, right next to that deserty area, which is now kind of the border of Pakistan and India. It's going to last for about 1,000 years and then just disappear. In fact, it just kind of started up mysteriously. We don't really see the rise of the civilization. It just kind of appears and then the people disappear. Part of that is we haven't done enough archaeology to really find the evidence we need. But almost all our information about the Indus Valley comes from archaeology. Because like I said, these people are going to disappear long before the next culture starts. At least the next major culture. One thing that I find interesting is that there are still sites that need to be dug up. We found them on maps. We know exactly where they are, but we haven't dug them up yet. So I always tell people, if you're interested in archaeology, there's still a lot of stuff out there to be found. Some of it we know, some of it we find by accident, and some of it people research for years before they find it. Alright, so these people start about 3,500 BCE, a little over 5,000 years ago. They start in the Stone Age, they'll make it to the Bronze Age before they disappear, and they get this name, Indus Valley Civilization, because they were located on or near the Indus River. Not very creative, but there you go. So a quick overview about the civilization. They were not all that big into farming. Now, they did farm wheat, barley, cotton, fruit, but they did not farm enough to feed all their people. So looking at the farms that we found, there's no way they could have fed as many people as they had. So we assume that they were big into trading for food. Now, it might have been that there were other farms in India, or maybe they were trading all the way with Mesopotamia. We don't know for sure. We do know that they did not grow rice. Rice may be a staple food in India now. It wasn't back then. Like I mentioned, they were big into trading. We think they traded for food, but we do know for sure that they traded supplies. These people were very, very skilled craftsmen. Great at weaving cotton, making jewelry. They made writing sticks, which were basically pencils. They invented the first dice. And if you look down the bottom, you'll see their dice look exactly like ours. And that's because we just copied their dice. We didn't even change where the numbers are. They invented back scratchers, pottery, all sorts of stuff. And they were big into wearing jewelry. Just about everybody wore jewelry. Let's talk about the city real quick, because their cities were extremely advanced. So their cities were in a perfect grid pattern. So if you look down at the bottom, you can see a modern day city that's in a grid pattern. So you see those lines, the streets going perfectly up and down. Now if you look closely, you'll see streets that are going from right to left, and then one random one going diagonally. This is pretty much how their streets looked. They measured them out like to the inch, which means there was advanced planning before it started. Mathematics, reading, writing, measuring. Lots of advanced city planning going on. They had walls, and at the very center of their cities was a fortress. This was kind of their most important building. It stored all their food. In the center, they would also have bathhouses. They had houses all around. If you think about it, Minneapolis is on a perfect grid pattern. Like North Minneapolis, if you've ever driven, one block is pretty much the same as every other block as far as size. And the streets are in that nice, perfect grid pattern. Alright, so their houses were made out of bricks. They took mud, formed it into bricks, and their houses could be 2 stories tall. At this time in history, that was a huge, huge thing. Very few people had houses 2 stories tall. They might use their roof for something, but they didn't really build on top of it. Something we noticed when we were doing archaeology is that the city was segregated by status or by job. So all the weavers might be in the upper right-hand corner, the northeast corner of the city. And all the, I don't know, the carvers, people who carve things, they might be in the southeast corner. And the pottery people would be in another corner. So they were all segregated by either their job or their status in the society. Now we could guess that that means that jobs were possibly handed down from parent to child. So if your parent makes shoes, you're probably going to be a shoemaker. But we don't know as far as could people move to other parts, could they take on other jobs and move to that other part of the city. We don't really know how that worked. Now they had a really interesting, if kind of disgusting, form of plumbing. Inside the houses, there'd be holes in the floor. You'd go to the bathroom into the hole, and it would kind of plop out onto the street. And the streets were all on a diagonal. What I mean is the houses were up higher than the middle of the street, and the street angled down towards the middle. In the middle of the street would be an open sewer. You can kind of see it if you look at the picture in the upper right hand corner. You can see that canal or that groove in the middle of the street. That's the sewer. Now they'd probably have more than one going through the whole city. They'd probably have one per street. So the idea is you go to the bathroom and it's going to run down into that sewer. This is where that high rainfall comes into play. Lots of rain is going to help wash that sewer, keep things moving, keep things cleaner. During the dry season, things might kind of sit there with the hot sun beating down on it, and probably not going to smell too good. In fact, I would guess that the people who live closest to the sewers were probably the lower status. That's just a guess. Now, some places still actually use this type of sewer. I have been to places that have this type of sewer. And trust me, you don't want to go there during the dry season. Just kind of a random thought that I've had. Now, what happens if you're drunk or you're stumbling around in the dark? This is an open sewer. So what's really to stop someone from falling in? I guess the answer's nothing. But if you do it once, I bet you'll never do it again. But it was smart because it pulled or pushed or whatever, took all your waste away. Alright, back to trading. We know these people traded with Mesopotamia because we found their stuff in Mesopotamia. In fact, for a long time, we thought Mesopotamia invented dice and things like that. Turns out, the Indus Valley had it first. We believe they sailed to Mesopotamia, and we believe they sailed all over the place. Alright, so here's some things that we kind of know. We know they had a pictograph writing system. If you look down in the right-hand corner, you'll see pictographs. Looks like a rhino. I don't know, one of those pictures looks like a spear. Another one looks like a fish. I don't know what they have to do with the rhino. Yeah, that's the problem. We know they had a writing system. We don't know how to read it. Yet. There are people working on it. The more of their writing we find, the better the chance we have to be able to read it. We know they had a language. I mean, obviously, they had a language. But we don't know what it was yet. If we can read the writing, maybe we can eventually find something similar. We know they had temples and religious statues. We found quite a few of these little statues in their temples. They're almost always women. So we know they had a religion, and this religion had goddesses. There were a few gods, but it seems like the goddesses were more important. So maybe they were a matriarchal society, a society where women had more power, where women ruled. We don't know that for sure. We do know that all the bodies are buried with their heads facing north, like perfectly north. We have no idea what that means, other than they had some kind of directional abilities. They could map out where true north was. Maybe they had a compass, maybe they used stars, maybe they used the sun, I don't know, but they figured out north. Alright, so they're going to disappear. And we don't know how, and we don't know why. Just poof, they're gone. We do have theories. Kind of the biggest theory is natural disaster. Earthquakes, hurricanes, not terribly likely, but possible. Droughts, floods, natural disasters. Maybe the rivers changed, because some of these cities are kind of close to the river, but not super close. So maybe the rivers changed their direction, and now they couldn't farm. Maybe there was a climate change. As you noticed on the map, they were pretty close to the desert. Maybe it wasn't quite so bad, and then desertification happened, the land turned into the desert, the people just couldn't live there anymore, so they moved. Maybe there's some kind of massive disease that came, killed off a lot of people. Or maybe they were attacked or invaded by the next civilization, the Aryans. Although if this were the case, you'd think we'd find lots of dead bodies, maybe with cut wounds, stab wounds, things like that. We haven't. My personal favorite theory, maybe they made Miss D angry and they were too afraid to show their faces again.